So this is good news for K-pop fans. I think we have one of them on this panel. South Korea has passed a law allowing huge stars like BTS to postpone military service until the age of 30. So able-bodied men have to serve by the time they are turned 28 unless they are seen to improve the country's cultural status and boost the economy. And clearly BTS qualifies. But I mean, do we think this is technically fair?
Well, I do think it's technically fair. Olympic athletes are given the same exception because that amount of time in their lives is so critical to an athlete's career. And the same could be argued for entertainers. So if those athletes are getting exceptions, then I do think BTS merits it. But what also amazed me was that when this story was first reported earlier this week, it made headlines in places like the New York Times and also at TMZ. And it's a little bit of a cultural education as to how the star system and the culture works in South Korea when you consider how old the BTS members are and what time frame they'd have to take away 22 months of their careers. Compare it to somebody like Chris Evans or Hemsworth, Marvel stars, Captain America and Thor, respectively, having to say no probably to big projects like that eat up a decade of their lives because in the middle of that, in that age range, because they would have been in that age range were they South Korean, they wouldn't have been able to commit to those kinds of projects. So it's just a completely different perspective in terms of celebrity and entertainment in other parts of the world.
I started thinking about this story, and then I thought of you, Lainey, you're a big BTS fan. You're also a big Elvis Presley fan, and he also. It's when you think about celebrities who were drafted into the military back in 1957, around Christmas time, he got a note saying that he was being drafted. He did receive one deferment because he was working on a movie at the time, but then he was sworn in as an army private, and he was widely praised at the time for not seeking to avoid the draft. And they offered him various branches of the government were like offering him cushy jobs. The Air Force wanted to use him as a recruiting model. The Army actually even offered to have him just perform for troops, but he chose to be a regular soldier. Now, it's during that time that apparently he was introduced to amphetamines and he began taking them almost daily. So it's actually was kind of the beginning of the end for him. I just think that was an interesting story to think about because we don't often think anymore about drafts and about celebrities in drafts in particular.
Lainey, I totally agree with you because I think BTS has done just as much, maybe even more, to improve the country's cultural status and economy than the country's best athletes and actors and so on. But can you confirm this to me? Because I've read in my brief readings that BTS, they're actually really socially conscious and even politically engaged when it's the norm in K-pop to kind of be disengaged. That's accurate, right?
It's 100% accurate. And that's also why they've been invited twice by the United Nations to address the General Assembly to promote social engagement among the youth of the world. I mean, that is how socially engaged they are.
That's incredible that they can continue to do that work. And it kind of, to me, it makes me think of Korean cinema that had its renaissance, if you will, in the 90s, precisely because censorship laws were opened, and these young burgeoning directors could watch new wave cinema from France and America, and they created a renaissance of film within South Korea that's we're still seeing going on today. Yet Bong Joon-ho, he had one of his films, he was blacklisted in 2003 because of one of those films, because he was really politically engaged. And now, here's the government promoting these young people to be socially active. It's great signal, it signals progress.